Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast, a conversation aimed at understanding all sides of mental health, addiction recovery, and homelessness. Each interview will include one's personal experiences and insights, or an expert's advice and knowledge within one of these fields. The goal is to promote awareness, guidance, and support for anyone who is affected by these challenges. Thank you all for listening. Welcome back to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan.cutuli, and we are here today for Season 2, Episode number 22 with Joshua LeBreton. Joshua has faced the struggles of anxiety and compulsive thoughts and behaviors, and Joshua now uses his creative ability to harness his struggles into music by conveying his thoughts and emotions through this creative art. Joshua joins the Mental Insights Podcast to speak about his own mental health struggles and his new creative outlet, the Canary Yellow. Josh, thanks for taking the time to be here today to be on the Mental Insights Podcast.
Hey, Brendan, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's great to really see how you're using your creative measures to help work through some of the challenges that you faced earlier. And to really start off within this first episode, we're going to be speaking about some of the challenges that you really were faced with as someone coming up in your own life, and really how eventually that transitioned into your own project. And to start about your own life, when did you really learn about the importance of mental health? When did you learn about what even mental health is, how that plays into effect in comparison to what we always know as physical health? How did you learn that realm of really what mental health is today and how you could stay educated on that?
Sure. I think the time frame that I started to think about the idea of mental health was really in my teenage years. I don't think I had the language to understand what that really was or exactly what it was, but I was starting to, I guess, get a grasp on it because of the struggles around my upbringing and the sort of rockiness around that. It was, I feel like I was always looking in, as well as looking out. And because of the maybe the more chaotic times around me, I got a better grasp of looking inward in order to navigate those things. So whereas, some people, they might just always be reacting to the things that happen around them, I was kind of always in this place where I was looking in order to try to understand what was happening around me. So that helped me build up a healthy level of things like empathy and just self-awareness and really just being aware of everyone around me and how they were perceiving me, how I was perceiving them. And so I think right around those teenage years is when I was starting to, come into that idea of understanding.
That's incredible. I think it definitely shows in terms of how you've, transitioned that into, the creativity that you use, because oftentimes, as you said, you know, definitely a lot of people react whenever they have some of these challenges, and it could be outlash, whether it's towards other people or towards themselves and other measures. And, it certainly shows the ways in which you looked within yourself. And in my own experience, I kind of had both. Like initially I was kind of that reaction person, and then I kind of transitioned into, seeking within. And I think self-awareness is definitely one of the key parts in terms of, starting to uncover some of the struggles that you had. And why don't you share kind of how that measure within looking in yourself helped you to, curate some of the belief systems to, find that courage within yourself of whether it was reaching out to someone else or whether it was just gaining that confidence of, I am worthy to be here.
Sure. So we mentioned self-awareness and kind of what that does to somebody. And self-awareness can be a great thing. It can also be kind of a burden in some ways if you become, almost what you might feel is like too self-aware or thinking too much about, your awareness. It's hard to function sometimes in daily life because of that. And I think I grew up around such a lack of self-awareness and figures around me and, authoritative figures over me. And I think because I was constantly questioning why they were not self-aware or why they had less self-awareness that really brought me to that perspective of wanting to be more self-aware, So I think missing out on um, those the positive lights of self-awareness, things that I try to bring today to my family, my wife and daughter, and in our household. I think the lack of that is really what brought me to the interest in focusing in on that. As I mentioned, there is a degree of too much self-awareness, and I feel like there were times in my life where, and even still now, where I'm too self-conscious, thinking too much about what people might be thinking of me, what I'm thinking of them, because I'm empathetic in that way. I'm trying to keep it all on the table. But yeah, I think that's why it is important, because I grew up with a lack of that. I music is kind of my story, and songwriting is kind of how I bring my story together. And early on, music was one of the things that really kept me grounded in that way as well, because when I was looking out and seeing these figures that were maybe less grounded, or as you mentioned, maybe lashing out in certain ways, music was a way to kind of give language and give emotion to that I may not have had the ability to understand yet. And so those are the things that really caused me to start to look inward and be interested in those perspectives.
That's incredible, Josh. It shows how powerful it can be to have that tool of looking within yourself, because at sometimes it can be a double-edged sword for people in terms of, as you're saying, being too self-aware, being too within yourself, of causing some harm within the way you're interacting within yourself. And, you spoke a little bit about how that was able to transition into your creativity. And I think, and as well, you're speaking about how that helped you kind of curate some values within your own family, within how you want to bring about the right values, and really measures within how you interact with other people. And within your early years, what impact did you see within your thoughts and behaviors, later on? Was there a transition in terms of, starting to work and practice within, you know, allowing yourself to understand that those just are your thoughts, and those are a product of what happened within your past? What kind of impact did you see within your thoughts and behaviors from those challenges, and how were you able to work through those?
Right. So I think trying to, as you mentioned, cultivate values inside myself. I was always, it seems like I was always escaping. I was always trying to escape. So between the years of, maybe, you know, between like 12 and 16, as I mentioned, there was rocky upbringing. I had many step parents in my life. I moved around quite a bit. All the way back in the very beginning of my life. I've actually never met my biological father. So all of those issues, played a factor, in kind of the things that made me who I was at that time. And um, one of the kind of earlier traumas, just among the handful of things that I was dealing with in my teenage years, was I actually moved to a different city during the middle of high school, and I didn't realize that was happening. I was sort of forced into that. I actually was visiting my adopted father in that city that he lived in, which was the one I was born in, but it wasn't the one I was living in at the time. I was visiting there for a Christmas vacation, and my parents, who I was living with at the time in the other city, kind of sprung it on me that I wasn't going to be coming back. So I was sort of, I guess you could say, maybe kicked out in that way, or left there in that way. And it's tough to get into the inner details of that, but I was a good kid. I wasn't involved in the dangerous things that might cause parents to be concerned in a way to where a listener might think, oh, did they send him there because he was in danger, doing any harm to himself or to others? And it wasn't that way. There was just a lot of manipulation involved with the household that I was living in. Some disagreements in terms of me coming into my own as a teenager, as a young adult, trying to navigate how to be independent. So because of all of these chaotic things and these chaotic circumstances, I would always try to escape. I would always try to get away from people, and because of that, I have a hefty dose of social anxiety today, and it still lingers. I'm 32, and so I have methods to deal with that now, and it's better than maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But it always lingers. And I think it just comes from me seeking those escapes, trying to get away from the situation I was in. It was almost like a any place but here type of situation. And all of those things forced me to look inward, and it forced me to say, what am I seeing that I don't agree with? And I was a sharp kid, and I was able to see those discrepancies that weren't okay. Again, even though I didn't have the language to describe that. So, there was some emotional abuse involved in my early years, a little bit of physical abuse, and all of it was just the product of people not quite thinking through what their struggles might be in that moment or in that week. And I was the oldest of four kids, so I have three younger siblings, and I think just all of those pressures combined, caused a lot of lashing out from the authority figures in my household. And again, all of that caused me to look inward. It caused me to really focus on what I was seeing that I didn't agree with, and what I might want to do or feel differently than that. Even though I wasn't in control of that, and I couldn't escape that situation until, of course, I got a little bit older and was able to leave those, I guess, entrapments. It was just a way of focusing in on a future, focusing in on being hopeful, and knowing that the circumstances that you're in are temporary. And as long as you can kind of guard your heart and protect your mindset in that, you can come out on the other side. So had no idea what other side was going to look like. Had no idea what 32 years old with a family was going to look like. But now that I have that, I'm able to look back and know that because I was able to guard myself, during those vulnerable moments, that maybe I should have had outside guidance and outside protection that I didn't have. Because I was able to at least postpone those things, I was able to avoid bringing harm to myself, bringing harm to others, getting involved with, maybe substance abuse and those types of things that people tend to latch onto in those situations. And music was there for me. That was really my substance, and that's what helped me get through that. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, there you go.
That was wonderful, Josh. I really appreciate that, because what you were just saying was, perfectly encompassing of how people should respond to, some of the challenges that they may face, which in turn is something that you did, and not even with just using your music, with, the mindset and the perspective that you had. And obviously that wasn't curated in a day, but you were able to use this perspective in order to, withhold yourself and restrain yourself from seeking out the measures, as you were saying, that wouldn't be of benefit, whether it's substance use, whether it's harming yourself. Those are challenging measures to work around and restrain yourself from. And, music was a tool for you to be able to do that. And even just some of those, philosophical measures that you were speaking about can be great for listeners today, of understanding, all right, I'm maybe in that position. I may be in a position where I'm going through these challenges, and, I need to maybe look to the future a little bit. I need to know that I'm not in control. And I think, those few key insights were something that listeners can definitely benefit from. And, you're speaking about it from that outside perspective, and to look at it a little bit more in terms of, now you've been able to overcome some of these struggles. Obviously, you said that there still is some lingering social anxiety, but throughout those challenges, what lessons were you able to really learn from this, whether it's, a philosophical, measure of how I should live my life, or whether it's some of the tools and skills that you're able to use to, cope in a healthy manner with some of those challenges that you faced, and some of the lingering social anxiety that you still face today?
Sure. I think so. You mentioned the lingering things like anxiety, social anxieties, and I have a very obsessive compulsive, sort of lifestyle and personality. And again, I do have methods for dealing with that, and I work on those day to day. I'm thankful for my experiences now that I'm beyond them, because I know that, because of being obsessive and the negatives that come along with that, there are positives. And I have a very strong attention to detail. I'm great at planning. I have probably maybe I would say a slightly unhealthy need for things like stability because of that. But the positives that come from that is, I try to ensure that my family is healthy, stable, comfortable, and I sort of bring that burden on so they don't have to focus on those things. We can actually enjoy life and, not be concerned with things that, might take life or time away from you. We can focus on just the living of that. And, I think that taking ownership over your life and just knowing that, um, you know, you're in control. Um, you are in control of yourself at some point. At some point, you're the one who's going to make decisions for yourself. And even if that's not the current predicament for you, as long as you can hang on to a little bit of hope, it is on the other side. And the other thing I like to remember is that more people than just yourself, more people than just myself, whoever is listening, have gone through these struggles. We're not the first ones to go through them. So it doesn't downplay our struggles. It doesn't make our struggles less than or not worthy or interesting, but it gives us hope that other human beings have tackled this as well. So as long as we can kind of put our focus on that and look at that in a hopeful way, and therefore look at our problems maybe a little bit more clearly with a little bit better focus and kind of wherewithal, I think that hope becomes a little bit easier to latch onto, because you aren't saying, when is that going to come? It's more of the process of how it's coming and how I'm getting there. And we have one life. We have a certain amount of time. We don't know what that time frame is. So the best thing we can do, I think, is to take ownership over that and to make sure to remember that because it's limited, even in the bad times, we should certainly focus on the future that will more than likely end in some good things that are within your grasp.
Absolutely, Josh. It shows how mindful and self-aware of your opportunities, of your presence. I think within the way you've been communicating and been responding in terms of what you've faced, and within this aspect, I think you'll have a great response to this because you've been able to show in which how you've been able to separate your past, your present, and your future, and try to use that towards your benefit. And you know throughout the challenges that you're facing and throughout even your life today, how really have you been able to separate past, present, and future and use that in order to, you know, leave those challenges behind, be present in which that's what you're in control over, but still provide measures to work yourself towards a better future?
I think one of the issues that came from those past kind of chaoses or just kind of rockiness and instability is it sort of I feel like it shook my forever confidence. So it's even difficult for me today to be fully confident in what I'm doing, and or let's say fully believe in whatever it is that resonates with me. So there because of that, I feel like I'm always rooting for, the underdog, because I know what it feels like to be an underdog. And I'm always trying to look for that perspective, whoever the underdog may be, whatever their struggles might be. I want to understand those struggles. I want to root for them and help them get through that, and I think it comes from having such a lack of belief in myself and knowing what that looks like over the years. Having my daughter, my daughter is 10 and a half months old now, by the way. And that was really the turning point for me to take everything that I've been trying to internalize, take everything that I've been building from the conversation that we've just had, and say, okay, how do I really put this in a way to where I can not only fully live it out, but also pass this down, because I don't want to pass down anxiety. I don't want to pass down, the sort of self-loathing qualities that I tend to have deep down inside. So, how do I take those things? How do I change them for the better, for my daughter and for future generations? Because the truth is if I take my struggles, be vulnerable with them, show progress, show method, show interest in unearthing them, I feel like I can share with not only my daughter, my wife, my family, but others, and just people who might be interested in my story, that there is a way to internalize what you're doing and um, make it be for the good. You know, so believing in yourself, even though it's hard sometimes, even if you might not fully have your ideas fleshed out, I think is really important. And being patient with yourself during that process, I think, is all part of that. Um, so that I think that's my answer to that question.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And, for people who may be in this challenging position today with whatever struggle they have within their own mental health, can use some of the insights that you were able to bring and what challenges you've been able to face and overcome in order for themselves to see ways that they could manage and maneuver throughout whatever they're facing today. So I want to thank you for that and sharing your story, sharing your insights. And for anybody listening, you can tune in to the next part of this episode where we'll be speaking about Josh's project, The Canary Yellow, and speaking more about how music has been so impactful in his own creative measures and what he's doing today in order to help people who have faced similar challenges. So be sure to tune in. We'll have all Josh's links below in the show notes, and take a listen to the next episode and let us know what you all think of this episode so far. It was episode 22 of season 2 of the Mental Insights podcast. So thank you all for listening. This was your host, Brendan Cutuli, and we were here with guest Joshua LeBreton. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Mental Insights podcast. Make sure to reach out to today's guest or myself if you need any advice, guidance, or support in your life today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and review to this podcast so we know what you thought of this episode. I look forward to being in touch with you all in the next episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day.